Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Classics with Courtney. Today, we will be talking about Suspicion, released in 1941, starring Cary Grant and Joan Fontaine. Ironically, I brought this up in my Rebecca review, and is it possible that this is mere coincidence that I'm going to talk about Suspicion after talking about Rebecca? I don't think so. I think this was planned. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the review. We meet our fella, Johnny Aysgard, as he boards a train and meets shy Lena McLaidlaw, played by Joan.
You don't smoke, do you?
No, I don't.
Oh, thank heavens for that. After last night, my head couldn't stand it. You understand it?
Johnny ends up meeting up with Lena by coincidence at a different gathering, and it's here that he decides to pursue her.
Oh, may I introduce Mr. Aysgard?
How do you do?
How do you do?
We were just passing by and we saw you in the window. And Johnny insisted on meeting you.
Why?
Oh, well, I'm told the sight of a really eligible male is a rare treat in this part of the country.
Isn't Johnny terrible?
Simply too fantastic for words. Aren't you, Johnny?
Not really going to church, are you?
Certainly I am.
Oh, no, you're not. You're coming for a walk with me.
Don't be ridiculous.
What do you want to do with it? I'll toss you for it. Heads you do, tails you don't, huh? Look at you.
Let me go.
Oh, I'm just beginning to understand. You thought I was going to kiss you, didn't you?
Weren't you?
Of course not. I was merely reaching around you, trying to fix your hair.
What's wrong with my hair?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that. It would have been extremely discourteous for me to bring the subject up.
Hello, Johnny.
Hello, Lena. I believe this is our dance, isn't it?
But we can't do this. Where are we going?
Which is your car?
Oh, this is ridiculous. Over there.
Good. Come on.
But I love you.
No, you haven't said the wrong thing, Monkey Face. I think I'm falling in love with you, and I don't quite like it.
You literally just met. How in the world are you two in love already? Depending on your idea when it comes to films and how much you're willing to let go, the idea of these two getting together rather quickly and then she immediately falls in love with him, he falls in love with her, the idea is a little crazy. I personally can overlook it when it comes to Disney movies because they're fairy tales. But when it comes to movies like this, where most of it is set in real time, and a lot of it could be based on real events, I find it to be a little hard to swallow. But again, this was the 1940s. It was practically the norm to fall in love right away at this rate. But you can also make the argument that this was the crucial mistake the more we get to see our beloved Johnny as the film progresses. After the night of the ball, Johnny and Lena run off and get married and start a whole new life, which Lena soon finds out that things are not quite what they seem.
It isn't bad news, is it, dear?
Oh, no, dear. It's from an old friend of mine. Stupid fellow, he wants £1,000. You couldn't spare 1,000, could you?
1,000? What does he want it for?
Hang if I know. Probably because I borrowed it from him.
You borrowed it? Why?
Because I was going on a honeymoon with the loveliest girl in the world, and I wanted her to be happy. Was she happy?
Didn't you have any money of your own?
Oh, not a shilling.
Are you broke?
Monkey Face, I've been broke all my life.
Why didn't you tell me? Every time I brought the subject up, you... Whatever made you take this extravagant house?
Well, I didn't think you'd want to live in a shack. A girl like you is going to come into plenty of money someday. Isn't it silly to spend the best years of our lives waiting? Why not be comfortable now?
Johnny, I'm just beginning to understand you. You're a baby. Oh, I know you didn't marry me for my money. You could have done much better elsewhere. But my income will never pay for all this. Never.
Well, what about your father?
Couldn't possibly ask my father. Why, even my mother. You saw how restrained she was when she met us at the station.
We then meet Johnny's friend Beaky, played by Nigel Bruce, when he comes to visit the lovely couple. But it is here that Lena notices that her antique chairs that were sent by her father are gone.
You're Beaky.
That's what they used to call me at school. I happened to be driving by. I thought I'd just pop in for a cup of tea.
Well, I've heard so much about you, Mr. Thornton.
Johnny told me about you, too. I ran into him at Newbury races last week.
The races?
Oh, put my foot in it as usual, have you? I mean, something wrong?
Yes, there were 2 chairs here this morning before I left.
Chairs? Disappeared, have they?
Yes, apparently.
Your wife seems to be missing some chairs, old boy.
Beaky, your pipe's not lit. Let me get you a match.
Oh, thanks, old bean. About those chairs, old bean. Missing chairs, old man.
Oh, yes, the chairs. Oh, well, I imagine the American came to get them this morning.
What American?
Well, didn't I tell you about him, darling? Oh, how stupid of me. Well, he dropped by about a week ago. Friend of Melbeck's. I think you were out riding.
Go on, old man.
Anyway, he admired the chairs. Extravagant fellow. Offered $100 apiece for them. Can you imagine? Anyone would take that.
I wouldn't.
Lena goes out and grabs some detective stories for Johnny, where she bumps into a friend and acquires more information about her husband.
Yes, he adores them.
So Johnny's settled down to the simple rural life.
And it seems to agree with him.
Abandoned all his vices, has he?
Vices? What vices, Mrs. Newsham?
Oh, such as betting at the races, for instance.
There is no time for that. He's much too busy with his job.
Is he? Then he must have taken an afternoon off last Tuesday. He was at the Merchester races.
Was it? How interesting. Good afternoon.
Goodbye.
But on the other hand, I told him I wouldn't prosecute. Of course,
I don't understand.
I told him I wouldn't prosecute.
What on earth are you talking about?
How does he get away with it? What reason did he give you when I discharged him?
When did you discharge him?
6 weeks ago.
Captain Melbeck, I haven't a very keen sense of humor. And if this is a joke, I wish you would tell me.
It's not funny to me, Mrs. Aysgarth. We had an unexpected audit 6 weeks ago, and the account showed a deficit of £2,000. And when I looked into Johnny's records...
Lena returns home and prepares to leave Johnny when she gets the bad news that her father passed away.
Then you've heard.
Yes, I've heard.
I'm so sorry, darling. I'm terribly sorry. This telegram just came from the doctor. It tells how it happened.
Also to my daughter Lena and her husband John Aysgarth, I bequeath the portrait of myself, painted by the distinguished Sir Joshua Nettlewood.
I could do with a drink.
I'll get you one, dear.
No, don't bother. I'll get it myself. It's in the study, isn't it?
I think we can all agree at this point that Johnny is basically a gold digger, and I think it's poetic justice, I believe is the term, that all Lena gets from his will is a portrait of him. Granted, I don't think the character of Lena cares because I believe she loved her father, but Johnny is thrown for a loop knowing that he will not be getting any money. It's honestly kind of amusing. Johnny begins his new idea of a new land development, but when Lena offers Beaky some advice, Johnny gets rather heated towards her.
Look here. What right have you to interfere in my affairs?
Well, I wasn't really. I was only...
You were only what?
Well, I was only trying to tell Beaky that he shouldn't leave everything to you, because if something went wrong, he should take a little responsibility, too. It's not as if you were both experienced businessmen.
What the devil do you know about business?
Oh, very little. I was only...
Suppose Beaky had taken you seriously. You'd have ruined the whole scheme. You realize that?
Yes, but if it weren't any good.
That's my business, not yours. If I say it's good, it's good. I'm going through with this deal. I don't want any interference from you or anyone else. Is that clear?
Yes, that's clear.
Throughout the movie, we see that Johnny is kind of an immature man with a little bit of charm, but still very immature. But I think it's this point in time where I personally look at it and go, you are so unlikable, Johnny. I mean, the fact that he sells her chairs was a really bad move, but the fact that he talks down to her and yells at her for giving advice to Beaky, to me, this is practically downright verbally being abusive. And I think this is where, for me, that I check out when it comes to Johnny. Like, I'm like, okay, I don't care what you do with the rest of this movie. I immediately do not like you. But at the same token, I can't vote for Lena either, because she takes it. She takes it over and over and over again and doesn't read the red flags. It's honestly very frustrating. Johnny and Beaky talk about checking out the land site, and Lena gets the suspicious idea that Johnny means to harm poor Beaky.
All the same, you have to go up there early tomorrow morning and take a look.
Well, why are you so insistent?
Because, as I told you, I won't be responsible.
That's a long one. I don't there's no such word. By the hour. I don't want to go up there in the morning. Besides, it'll be nasty and cold and wet.
Now, Beaky.
Oh, well, if we got to go, what time do we have to start? Now, if I had an ER, I could make that murderer.
The earlier, the better. I'd say about 7 o'clock. There won't be so much traffic on the road.
7 o'clock, I say. That's a bit big stale.
Big stale?
Yeah, too early. Too early. Get it? Never heard that one, Alfie? Big stale.
Is Mr. Aysgarth having breakfast, Ethel?
No, ma'am, he wouldn't wait. He said he'd have some on the road. He left about 2 hours ago with Mr. Thwaite.
What car did they use?
Mr. Thwaite's, I believe, ma'am.
Put in the plug now.
How's that, Alfie? Hello, girl.
Hello, darling. Well, what's all this? I've only been away a few hours.
Seems like 1,000 years.
Seems like that to me, too.
Oh, shut up, Beaky. It was nothing.
Nothing? You're very close to losing my life. Do you call that nothing?
Nearly lost your life.
You're very close to it.
Let's drop the subject.
No, Beaky, go on. I want to hear.
Well, there we were at the top of the cliff. I finally agreed that old Johnny was right. There was a little too much chalk in the soil. Well, I was trying to turn my car near the edge of the cliff. I never was very handy with a car.
Was Johnny in the car?
No, he was a few feet away, looking over at the view.
It's hardly worth talking about. Let's all have a drink.
Go on, Beaky.
Well, I didn't realize I was backing the car towards the edge, but I was, by Jove, right up to it. If old Johnny hadn't taken a flying leap and grabbed the brake, I should be in Kingdom Come by now.
Johnny and Beaky both leave for Paris/London, and Lena gets a surprise visit from the inspector for the police.
You know a Mr. Thwaite?
Yes, he's a close friend of my husband.
Well, I don't know how to put it quite. But perhaps it'd be easier if I showed you this, in this afternoon's paper.
What do the French police believe caused the death?
This is the copy of a telegram we received from Paris. Thwaite visited the place in the company of another Englishman. Both men had evidently been drinking. On arrival, Thwaite ordered a bottle of brandy. According to the statement of one of the waiters belonging to the establishment, Thwaite's companion asked for the brandy to be served in large beakers. Apparently, as a result of a bet between the two men, Thwaite filled one of these beakers to the brim and drank it all. The other man was not present when the actual tragedy happened, having left the place a few minutes before. French police have not yet succeeded in establishing his identity.
Johnny returns home and talks to Lena about Beaky, and then she informs him about the inspector's visit. As Johnny phones them, he gives a different tale of what he told her, which only makes Lena more suspicious.
What did you tell them? Did you mention the corporation?
Naturally. I told them that Beaky was planning to dissolve it.
Oh, I wish you'd left all that to me. What else did you tell them?
That's about all. I said I was expecting you back from London at any moment.
Hello? Hello, Inspector. This is John Aysgarth. I've just got home. Yes? Yes, well, I drove up to London with him on Tuesday evening. We dined at the Savoy. No. Yes. Then I saw him off at Croydon Airport. Yes. No, I stayed in London until this afternoon. At my club. Yes. Yes. Not at all, Inspector. If I can help you in any other way, be sure to let me know.
Lena discovers that Johnny tried borrowing off her insurance, and while attending a party, he delves into a conversation about poisons.
Darling, you're not shivering, are you?
I have a bit of a chill.
What, cold in all this sunshine? Well, let me warm you up. Oh, my poor little shivering baby. How do you feel now? Better?
Much.
Good. Darling, what are we doing at night?
We're going to Isabel's to dine.
Oh, what a bore.
How would you do it simply?
I don't know, dear, but I'd use the most obvious method. The most important thing is that no one should suspect me.
For instance?
For instance, poison. Just use the first one that came to my mind. Say, arsenic.
Ah, arsenic.
Yes, but it seems to me that by now someone would have discovered a poison that can't be traced. What about it, Doctor?
A very interesting corpse dropped in the other day.
Do let's hear about it.
No, please. Don't change the subject. I saw that look that passed between you. There is an untraceable poison, isn't there?
Nonsense, no such thing.
I'll bet you know, Doctor. What is it?
Not in a million years.
Izzy can always tell by looking at a person's face whether he or she is capable of murder. Can't you, Izzy?
Well, I don't want to sound conceited, but I usually can.
What about me, dear? Could I murder anyone?
Oh, you couldn't hurt a fly, Bertram, unless it was already dead.
What about Mrs. Aysgarth? She has a strange glint in her eye.
I'm afraid not. Lena hasn't the nerve any more than I have. And as for you, you silly thing. Oh, look at the expression on his face. Trying to look mysterious, are you? Ah, you can't fool me. You couldn't commit a murder if you tried for 100 years.
No, I don't believe I could.
Lena becomes more uncomfortable around Johnny to where she asks him to sleep in his study and then decides to go stay at her mother's. Johnny insists on driving Lena to her mom's when an accident happens with the car door, and then we get our reveal.
I think I'll take the shortcut. Lena, what's got into you? Lena, no, stop it, you little fool, stop it! I've had enough. How much do you think a man can bear? Listen to me. You turn me out of your room, you go running off to your mother's, and now you shrink away from me as though you hated me. You're my wife, Lena.
I know.
You almost killed us both back there because you had to pull away even when I was reaching over to save you from falling out of the car.
Johnny, why were you asking Isabel those questions about the poison? What were you planning to do with it? Johnny, you were going to kill yourself. Wait, darling.
Yes. But I saw that was a cheap way out, so I'm going back to see it through. Prison term and everything.
Prison, you mean Melbeck? That money you took?
I can't pay it back. I made the last attempt to raise the money when I went away with Beaky.
Paris?
I went to Liverpool. I tried to borrow on your insurance, but it didn't work.
You mean you were in Liverpool when Beaky... Then you didn't go to Paris?
Of course not. You think I'd have let some idiot give poor old Beaky that brandy if I had?
Johnny, if I'd only known. This is as much my fault as yours.
The ending we got was more of an alternate ending because throughout the movie we see that Johnny is totally guilty of his crimes, including attempted murder and possibly murder of Beaky. However, the studio at the time couldn't take Cary Grant being a bad guy, so they changed the ending, much to Hitchcock's and Cary Grant's disappointment. Quite frankly, when looking at the whole picture, I think this ending is a tad weak, but it has since grown on me. So it's not a bad ending, but it's not one of the best. Anyone who has seen the movie, or at least heard of it, knows that the most iconic scene in the movie is when Cary Grant brings a poisonous, or supposedly poisonous, glass of milk to his wife. There's a light bulb that glows within the milk, which was Hitchcock's way of making the milk more sinister. Ironically, I recently saw a movie called The Mirror Cracked with Kim Novak, another Hitchcock lady, Elizabeth Taylor, and Rock Hudson. And there is a moment where Rock Hudson brings Elizabeth Taylor a glass of hot chocolate. And once again, he walks up the stairs. I thought that was a very awesome nod to the Master of Suspense. From what I managed to gather, Cary Grant did not have a good time working on this movie. He and Joan did not get along. I believe he thought that his character could have had more development, whereas he thought Joan got way more attention. Whereas it's interesting that there are some facts that say that Joan thought she had less attention as opposed to what Hitchcock did to her and Rebecca. But with all that being said, Cary did not have a good time on the set and actually had a falling out with the Master of Suspense. However, they managed to mend their disagreement, and Cary would end up working for Hitchcock 3 other times. Notorious in 1946, To Catch a Thief in 1955, and North by Northwest in 1959. Based on the novel Before the Fact, I believe this movie took a lot of liberties and is definitely not similar to the book in many ways. I personally have not read the book, though. And according to sources that I've heard, both on YouTube and other sources that have stated that what happens in the book is way different in the film, I don't know if it is something I'm interested in reading. I might, just because it's a Hitchcock project, but I don't know if I could stomach the book just from the changes I've heard and how it ends. I do know how it ends, so I don't know if I would actually try to read it. From what I gathered from the information about Joan Fontaine, she thought that she had less attention than what she did in Rebecca. However, supposedly this was because Hitchcock trusted her enough with the role that he felt he didn't need to work with her as much. Whereas Rebecca, she was still kind of green, and he wanted that performance to be absolutely perfect, which is why he went to the great length that he did to get the performance out of her. If you're going to compare Rebecca and Suspicion, which many people have, including Joan, who apparently has been quoted saying, "I must do this picture, Hitchcock, because I believe it'll be another Rebecca." In some ways it is, but I think it's of a lesser quality to Rebecca, I guess is what I would say. Not that Suspicion is bad, but if you're going to compare Rebecca to me is a stronger story. The characters are richer, and I prefer Maxim de Winter and his struggles over Johnny, who doesn't have struggles other than the fact that he's always broke and he's always getting money from his wife or gambling. But aside from all of that, Suspicion really is not a bad movie. Aside from our two main leads, we actually do have a great supporting cast lined up here. Nigel Bruce, of course, is back with working with Hitchcock, and Joan, of course. But we also get to see the great Cedric Hardwicke, who did a lot of great movies, including The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1939 and The Ten Commandments in 1956. And that's just to name a couple. You also have Mae Whitey as Lena's mother, who also worked with Hitchcock in 1938 in The Lady Vanishes, another pretty good Hitchcock movie. As I stated, Suspicion is not a bad movie. However, it will depend on how much of the characters you can take. How much of Johnny's immaturity and cruelty can you take, and how much of Lena's quote-unquote lack of smarts, to put it lightly, can you be able to handle. And honestly, this was a movie that me personally, I did not like either. When I first watched it, I hated how the characters were. I thought, Lena was kind of dumb for staying with him. I couldn't stand Johnny. I just didn't like it. But it has since grown on me to be a pretty decent Hitchcock movie. Is it something I revisit? Of course it is. Is it something I would link in my top 5? No. I don't know if I'd do top 10. Who knows? And that basically wraps up my review of Suspicion. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Suspicion. What are your thoughts on this movie? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? And if you haven't seen it, did I pique your interest? Or is it something you want to be rid of? So let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye! Have a great and wonderful day.